baby, it's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and it's America Week. Being born and raised in Washington, D.C., this is my favorite holiday, as we are celebrating arguably the greatest country in the world. Growing up, the 4th of July was all about eating too much good food, drinking too much beer, and trying not to get busted for drinking underage by DC cops. Oh, the good old days. To celebrate America on the podcast, we have a story that is the American dream. This story is about a kid who has talent on a wakeboard, and he makes his pro dreams come true by accepting a job as a janitor. The former janitor I'm talking about is Aaron Grace. He used to be a professional wakeboarder, and now he finds himself at home behind a desk at Liquid Force, where he's the team and marketing manager. And throughout the interview, Aaron shares an unfiltered view of what he thinks about the wakeboard industry and the talent within it. Before we get into the podcast, I want to thank you for listening to the show, and thank you to everyone who bought hats on the powellmovement.com website. If you want to support the show, these limited edition hats are a great way to do it. And before we get to Aaron, I need to ask you to please follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, share my posts on Facebook, and email me if you have something to say or share. My email is Mike at The Powell Movement, and it's always great to hear from you. Finally, I want to thank my sponsors. They are Evo, and I need to mention that Evo is your one-stop shop for everything wakeboard, Rescue Water, and 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk to Aaron Grace.
I'm actually still at home right now. I figured it'd be easier to do this at home than in the office, so it's actually kind of nice.
Do you get to work from home much?
Not a whole lot. You know, there's certain things that we can do from home, but no, for the most part, myself and everybody else works in the office.
What do you really need to be in the office for, though? You'd have a phone and a computer at home if you're not shipping stuff to people.
I kind of agree 100%, especially since I hardly ever ship anything considering our warehouse is in Texas. So, yeah, I'll have to have a talk with my bosses and let them know I'm going to start working from home.
Yeah, I'm just going to save the company a lot of money. We're going to shut down the home office. What we're going to do is have everyone work remotely. We'll have a place where we keep our company boat, and that's where we'll have our meetings. And I think that's how the business should be run. You're going to save about $200,000 a year in just your building and all the infrastructure, and you can credit that all to me.
Hey, I like it a lot, and I'm sure there's some others around the office that will agree 100%.
But working from home is not all it's cracked out to be. I mean, I have to wake up whenever I want. If I want to have a beer at 10 a.m., I have a beer at 10 a.m., although I never do that. But if I did, I'd have a 10 barrel.
Can't complain with the 10 barrel. I was just in Bend a couple weeks ago, and we went to 10 barrel. Great place.
Yeah, it's a fun place, good food. But we're not going to talk about Bend. We're not going to talk about 10 Barrel for a little bit. We're going to talk about you growing up in Idaho, but not even growing up in Idaho. You just had a little vacation in Idaho, and it sounded like you didn't want to come back to San Diego.
No, I mean, I love San Diego, Cardiff. I've got to travel to some pretty amazing places, but when I come back to Cardiff, I'm always happy. But yeah, when I get back to Coeur d'Alene, in Hayden Lake to be exact, it's a pretty special place, especially this time of year when the weather's perfect. The lakes are getting warm. It's a great spot. So I did not want to come home.
What's life like growing up in Idaho? Because you grew up pre-internet, I would think. And
oh, yeah.
You were pretty much on an island. I lived in like a big city area in the DC area. So there was a lot of shit going on in my world. But I saw my own private Idaho, and it just seems like that area, there's not much going on.
We created our own shit. I mean, we were constantly outside screwing around on BMX bikes and skateboarding. I grew up on a lake. I'm pretty fortunate there. So I could actually leave my front door, run across the yard and down onto the dock. And I mean, I think I was taking the boat out solo as about a 6-year-old, which I think this day and age wouldn't fly. Kind of having the freedom to go outside and not have to worry about anything, just run around the neighborhood, shoot BB guns. It was a real active childhood, I'd say.
And I love to find out about if people were rich, poor, middle class growing up. It kind of lets me know how hungry people are. And I was going to preface with yours that since you're a wakeboarder, I was going to ask you if your parents had money because I assumed that you grew up on a lake, you had a couple boats, you had a brother and a sister, white picket fence, dog, lake, and everything was easy, which is awesome. Is that pretty much growing up?
I wouldn't say that. I actually, one nice thing about growing up in North Idaho, especially not to date myself, but
I date myself every night.
I was born in 75. So growing up and, being on the lake in the 80s and early 90s, things were a lot less expensive up there. Real estate and everything's starting to go through the roof. But back then it was very inexpensive. My parents were just school teachers who happened to move up there in 1972 when property was dirt cheap, and they were able to buy a place on the lake. We had an old 1979 Century inboard outboard runabout boat that I would water ski, kneeboard, tube, all that stuff behind before the scurfer and wakeboarding were invented. But there were some wealthier people on the lake and some wealthier kids who had nice boats, and I became friends with them quickly.
So that's how you got on the nice boats. But it sounds like your parents did it right, because today 2 teachers aren't going to have a property on the water.
No.
So life wasn't a challenge growing up. Anything traumatic happened during your childhood that we should talk about?
When I was 5, I broke my femur and was in the hospital for 22 days because this was before pins and screws and everything. So they had to pull my bones back together for them to line up. And then was in a cast for 3 months as a 5-year-old. So
how'd you break your femur at 5?
My parents had an unfinished basement and they were remodeling the basement, and there's no railing on the stairs. And I fell off the side and landed on my heel and it broke my femur right in the middle.
Any problems with that afterwards? Because that's a serious injury.
Both my hips and my lower back are pretty bad. Arthritis in both hips. But I went to a doctor, a hip specialist here in San Diego 7 or 8 years ago, and he looks at me and he goes, "Did you ever break your femur?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was 5. And he said, "Your hips have been slightly off ever since then." So yes, I guess there has been some repercussions to that over the years.
But maybe that made you better at your craft. Maybe it had you standing in a different position, and that made things better for you.
You never know. Possibly.
And like your high school days, what did you look like in high school? What did you dress like? Music? Who were you as a person?
It's pretty funny because for 1 year in 1989, I moved to Carlsbad down here. My dad took a job down here. Down here, I actually got really into tennis. When I moved back to Idaho, my nickname soon became Cali Boy.
Okay.
I had the long blonde hair, bangs over my eyes, and it wasn't exactly the Idaho style, because back then it was still, and it still is to this day, but kind of backwoods, hunting and fishing and that type of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I pretty much played every sport. The only thing I didn't really get into was baseball because there was too much standing around for me.
Yeah, that sport's stupid.
Yeah. I think about 1990 is when I got my first scurfer. And then I kind of got hooked to standing sideways behind a boat. And from there, it just progressed. With every time a new board would come out, I'd sell my previous board to get the new board. I think about mid-93, 94 is when I really started getting into the wakeboarding. And the board started to progress as well at the time.
The scurfers were very narrow in the water compared to what you got on just a few years later.
Yeah.
So are you involved in the wakeboard scene? I mean, are you following all the contests, the riders, and into the culture? Because if you live on a lake, is it something you're doing every day too?
Yes. Weather permitting, obviously, up there from about October to March, there's not a whole lot of wakeboarding because the water just gets too cold. Actually, the lake I grew up on would freeze, so then we'd play hockey and ice skate and stuff, ride snowmobiles across it. But yeah, I definitely followed the culture up there. A good friend of mine, a guy by the name of Jeff Yates, who was really into the snowboard culture at the time also, was good friends with Keith Wallace and a couple other kind of local semi-pro snowboarders in the area. He was probably the big name guy around town for wakeboarding as well. So I got to be friends with him. He really got me in the sport, which led me into meeting Bill McCaffrey in about 1994, 95. Bill was kind of invented a lot of the tricks that are still done to this day on a wakeboard.
Okay.
Bill now is the owner and operator of Alliance Multimedia that does a magazine and website and just everything for wakeboard, essentially.
Okay, so they're the hub for wakeboard content?
Yeah, and he also started a company back in the day based out of Seattle called Neptune Wakeboards, which came out right about the same time as the Flight 69. So they're kind of the first twin tip wakeboards, the snowboard influence, obviously. But yeah, I definitely follow the culture, met the in crowd sort of say in that industry, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, and your riding is taking off to a point where people are recognizing you a bit. I mean, if you're spending every day on the water for 6 months a year, you're going to get better and you're going to get better fast. Around 97 is, I think, when you first get officially involved in the industry. And what does that even mean?
Well, I mean, people ask me sometimes, hey, how'd you get involved? And I pretty much started out at the lowest level possible. I was good friends when I lived up in the Northwest with Scott Downing, a.k.a. Sweaty,
Okay.
who is still kind of a fixture in that area. At the time, he was a sales rep for Rusty Clothing and Surfboards. So I moved down to San Diego, and he got me a job at the surfboard factory. So here's a kid from Idaho who knows nothing about surfboards.
And wait, let me interrupt real quick. Was there any college or anything after high school, or is it straight to this?
I went to a junior college in Coeur d'Alene. It's called North Idaho College. It's a 2-year school right on the lake.
Okay.
I was enrolled for 2 years. I actually went for a grand total of maybe 4 months. So just because, if it was nice out, we'd be at the lake during the winter and it was snowing. I was like, I don't need to go to class. I'm going to the mountains. So I think my first year of college, I got about 104 days in on the mountain that year. So there wasn't a whole lot of school involved.
Were your parents bummed on that?
They were, but at the same time, they're like, well, he's following his passion. And actually kind of seems like he's doing something with it. So I told them that, hey, I'm going to try and ditch this school thing for a little bit and see if I can follow my quote unquote dream or follow my passion in board sports. So yeah, that's when I moved to San Diego in about 1997. Was here for about a month or so. And then, like I was saying, ended up getting a job at the Rusty Surfboards factory. And I started out as the janitor. I made $6 an hour. I swept foam dust out of all the shaping bays, cleaned the toilets, dusted off the surfboard racks. I was literally the janitor.
What was the gnarliest thing you had to clean? Did you ever have a total breach in the toilet that someone didn't want to flush because it was so pretty?
You know what? Not that I can remember. So there must not have been anything real bad.
But you were a janitor, and we'll put that on your resume.
Yeah, exactly.
And how long are you in the custodial business for?
Off and on for a year or two. But, within that year, at the same time, Rusty was manufacturing wakeboards at the time. I happened to go out and wakeboard one day on the boat with Rusty Preisendorfer and then the GM who ran the surfboard factory and was also involved in the wakeboard side of things. And I went out and wakeboarded with him one afternoon, and they were like, holy shit, this kid can actually ride. So I kind of moved over and helped them with some wakeboard designs. Gosh, way back then we were doing bindings with Herbie Fletcher. He had a binding company called Badass through Astrodeck. So I got in pretty tight with the Fletcher family, which was cool to be working with him and Christian way back in the day. And yeah, it kind of kept progressing from there.
So your janitor position enabled you to meet everyone in wakeboarding. If you weren't cleaning something, you were meeting somebody.
Yes, I'd be out on the boat. Again, at the time, there was a wakeboard magazine called Launch. It was probably the second biggest publication behind Wakeboarding Magazine. Jeff Barton was the editor, and I lived about 2 blocks from him in Pacific Beach. So I became good friends with him. And obviously getting in tight with the media back then, especially when print was really big, helped me a lot. Working with photographers and getting photos in the magazines, and JB and I became good friends.
Were you smart like that at that point, thinking, hey, this is going to get me more exposure, or were you just friends with the guy and it turned out to work out well for you?
No, I think I was smart about it as well.
Okay.
I was also spending a lot of time out in Canyon Lake, which at the time was kind of a hotbed for wakeboarding in Southern California. Randy Harris lived out there, Ricky Gonzalez, Sean Segrin, all these, especially Randy. Randy was making a really big name for himself in wakeboarding. So riding with him, working with photographers out there definitely was a big stepping stone.
That helps get you known. You get a couple shots in magazines and you're just around the right people where there's always going to be photographers shooting.
Exactly. And I had a little bit different style than most people back then. I definitely was more influenced from the snowboard side of things, living in North Idaho and riding with semi-professional snowboarders. So, I come down here and back then it was more contest driven.
Okay.
And I came in with a completely different mentality where I didn't like contests. I wanted to go out and make a 360 or a 540 look really good, as opposed to trying to do a whirly bird or a, whatever flippy twisty trick just because it looked more like trick ski. And I was like, this is a board sport. Let's ride this like an actual board, not a trick ski.
I mean, there's something to be said for style. I mean, I'd much rather see a clean, styly 360 than any of the huck spins that you see today. But
yeah,
in contests, the huck spins win.
Yep, or just a huge method or something,
Yep.
Which if you do it properly, especially off one of those big jumps today, is almost tougher than a huck spin. So, yeah, I mean, it evolved from Rusty, and then Don Wallace, I started riding for Liquid Force when Rusty kind of started to fizzle out building boards.
Does Don call you up and say, hey, we know of you, or how do you actually get connected with Liquid Force?
Don was living here at the time as well. Another spot we would ride a lot was on the Carlsbad Lagoon. And back then, Don actually lived on the lagoon with a couple other wakeboarders back then, Southern California guys, Keith Kipp and Chris Sayer. We would ride as a group. And when things didn't work out with Rusty, he's like, hey, man, why don't you ride for Liquid Force? Because Don was the team manager at the time. So obviously I was friends with him. And we knew each other just from working in the industry and kind of almost helping shape and form what wakeboarding and the industry is today.
Okay.
I never just was able to make a living wakeboarding. I always had a job as well.
With Liquid Force, when they first come to you and say, hey, do you want to ride for Liquid Force? Is it, we're going to give you a couple boards, we're going to give you a couple grand? What's the deal there?
Products and photo incentives. So obviously, photo incentives was an incentive to go work with photographers as much as possible. And
are these the photo incentive days where you have to actually physically pull out the magazine ad, send it in with an invoice to get paid?
Yes, it was. I don't think there was even such thing as a scanner back then. You couldn't scan, you couldn't do anything. It was all, yep.
And there was so many people that lost money because they didn't rip that page out and put it in the mail.
Yep, exactly.
Do you work a photo incentive into contracts these days now that you're a team manager?
I do not. To me, being sponsored, that's part of a reason we pay you. We expect you to work with photographers and getting photos in magazines, posting on social media, which is obviously more than print now. I mean, to me, it's just part of being a professional, quotation mark, athlete.
Are you still cleaning bathrooms when you're riding for Liquid Force?
It's funny. I actually bounced around. I think when I first started riding for Liquid Force, I might have been working at Rusty briefly, but at that time I was actually in surfboard sales, which is, again, kind of funny. A kid from Idaho riding custom surfboard orders and working with some of the best shapers in the world. And then Don actually offered me a job at Liquid Force, and I was doing purchasing. I was buying nuts and bolts and the materials needed to build a wakeboard or run an office, reams of paper and that type of stuff.
So you're a part-time pro rider and then a part-time college student getting your education from Liquid Force University.
Pretty much, exactly. And I guess Don was my professor.
Okay. And in terms of your professional riding career, because we're going to talk more about your job, but what were the highlights of your professional career?
I'd say one of my highlights, I got the cover of Launch Wakeboard magazine. That was late 90s because I think I was still on a Rusty board at the time. Getting in ads for Rusty back in the day, I felt pretty good about because at the time, Rusty was a huge company.
Yeah.
And here I am, kid from Idaho in the ads for Rusty. Same thing, moving on to Liquid Force, getting some Liquid Force ads, being the poster boy, the main poster for the first team video we did called Wide Awake. And then I actually did ride in a handful of contests. There used to be a contest in Hawaii, and I was like, contest in Hawaii? Yeah, I'll go ride in that.
Right.
And I made it into the finals with Darren Shapiro, Scott Byerly, Kobe Mikasic, somebody else and me. It was a 5-person final. And here I am with these guys I've looked up to that I've, read about in magazines. And here I am in the finals. I think I ended up getting 5th, but hey.
For a non-contest guy, that's a pretty cool thing.
I made it into the finals by landing, I think, one of the first 720s off a double up ever in a contest. So that's about my highlights. Kind of fizzled out after that.
Your pro career doesn't last that long because I think you end up transitioning to team manager at Liquid Force in around 2001. So
yes.
You were a pro for a couple of years. That's cool. You'll have that for the rest of your life, and that's pretty awesome. But did you see the end coming as a pro? Did you realize that, hey, man, I'm not going to be able to make this thing happen as a pro wakeboarder, and I've got to do something and then get a job in-house? Or does Don offer something to you? How does it happen?
I mean, I kind of saw that from day one. Hence the reason I kept working at these other brands. But yeah, I mean, I started Liquid Force around 2001, and I'm still riding quite a bit. I mean, it was nice to be able to work there, but also have the ability to leave and go with the athletes to a photo shoot, whatever it might be. Because again, I was still riding quite a bit then.
If you were a pro rider transitioning in-house, it's not like you're going to quit riding.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely knew that, hey, I'm not going to make a living riding the board, but I like this lifestyle. I'm still able to ride whenever and how much ever I want. And right about the same time, I also took on a role for Spy Optic and started running their wakeboard program as well while I was also working at Liquid Force.
Okay, and then eventually you run Spy, Monster, and Liquid Force all at the same time, I believe.
Yep, I did.
Okay, and we will talk about that in a little bit, but I want to get into you first getting into the job. So you're a kid coming from Idaho who you've just followed your passion your whole life. And then not that you ever thought you were going to be a huge pro, so it's not a big surprise that you have to take a full-time position and you've got a great job, a dream job in a team management role. But what is the transition going from being on the road and chilling with your friends a lot to having to go into an office, I would think, almost every day a week unless you're out on a shoot?
It's tough, but it was something, even just the way I was raised as a kid, that, hey, I'm going to have to work eventually, Yeah, I might not go to college. I might not do it, the way you're supposed to do it. But, I mean, I was ready for it, I guess, to say.
And I would say you did it the way you were supposed to do it for you, because what would college have done for you? It would have robbed your wakeboarding career. So you wouldn't be where you were if you went to college.
Yep. I mean, there's times where I think back, like, man, I should have gone to college. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't have the stories and the amount of fun I've had by any means.
You'd have more time at a desk and a little bit more money.
Exactly. But yeah, transitioning into the job side of things, I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning how a business works. I mean, to this day, I learned something every day going into work.
But that first 2 months when you're sitting down like Photoshop, this program, that program, you might have used some of them before, but all stuff that you probably aren't versed in everyday work because you had a cooler job on the water or cleaning toilets, maybe not cooler there.
Yeah.
But then you're a desk jockey and you have to figure out all the bullshit, like how to work the copier and how to send a fax and how to do this. At some point you look and be like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Oh yeah, like, what the fuck does PC load letter mean? Yes, there were times like that. And then, yeah, when I know the other guys are going out on the boat to ride or, going out for a surf, I'm like, hey guys, I got to submit your photo incentives and get you guys paid or whatever it might be. But again, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, I still had quite a bit of freedoms. And if there was something I wanted to do, as long as my work was done for the day, I was able to leave and go have fun.
There are a lot of worse jobs you can do for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Before I get any further, I'm going to take a break real quick to talk about my sponsors. And the first one is Evo. They are hands down the best retail location in the country for ski, snowboard, skate, bike, lifestyle, and they have everything you could possibly want for your adventure. I've personally shopped there since they opened because no one comes close to the service they offer and the vibe the shop creates. And now that it's bike season, if you're in Denver, Seattle, or Portland, Evo is your one-stop shop for the best bike service and brands. If you can't make it to a store, don't worry. Evo.com has all the brands, all the products, and a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. For listening to the show, they're going to give you 10% off your entire order. When you check out, use the code capital TPM, the number 10, it's all one word, and you'll get that 10% off. My next sponsor is Rescue Water, and they are proactive recovery, and they should be your choice for hydration. Rescue Water is science that is designed to replace your electrolytes better than a traditional sports drink. Think of it like this. Energy drinks are better than coffee for a pick-me-up, like Rescue Water is better than a sports drink for hydration. And with Rescue Water, better is something you can feel. Anytime you work out, you lose electrolytes. Make the smart choice and replace them with Rescue Water. And if you're a night owl like me, drink a cold Rescue Water before bed after big nights out. No more Saturday morning headaches, and it's amazing how well it works for me. Make Rescue Water work for you by heading over to rescuewater.com. You'll save 20% off a 12-pack case when you enter the code RESQWATERTPM. That's all one word. Rescue Water is also available on Amazon. My final sponsor, brews beer, drinks beer, and has fun doing it, period. They are the 10 Barrel Brewery based out of Bend, Oregon, and they live and breathe the snow and bike culture. And they support it with events and, more importantly, beer. 10 Barrel wants you to know that it's important to drink beer outside. While we all have a few cold ones indoors, there's nothing that compares to a cold 10 Barrel when you get off the trail or you're just chilling with your friends out in Mother Nature. And while we all love beer, 10 Barrel also delivers on the food front. If you find yourself in Bend, Portland, Boise, Denver, or San Diego, make sure you check out one of the 10 Barrel pubs for some great food and our favorite beers. Support the beer that supports action sports, the 10 Barrel Brewery. Find out more about the beer, pubs, and events over at 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. They make this show happen. I love them. And now we will get back into your life. And we were talking about your first days as a desk jockey and how it is a little frustrating at first. But that first year, I think you were sent out on the road pretty much right away, like the trip across America. And you're going from being an athlete who would be on the trip across America, partying, having fun, and creating problems for the team manager, to being the team manager. And how strange is that for you, and how tough is that to manage?
It was tough. So the trip across America was about a 90-day nonstop motorhome with a boat behind it tour.
Wow.
It was literally a trip across America. I mean, we would visit about every state. There's a different demo about every day. And you'd fly in anywhere from, 4 to 6 athletes for each week. The other guys would go home. A new group would go on the road. And it's a nonstop party. You're working hard, but it's also kind of a nonstop party. And trying to get those guys to behave and be responsible can be a big task at times. I think running that tour for the years that I did aged myself a good 20 years, I bet.
What was the biggest headache that you had in that tour, whether it involved police, riders, anything? Because I'm sure you have a lot of bullshit and the team manager has to deal with it.
Some of the stuff that I really would bug me is I wouldn't be on the motorhome. I'd be here at home and something would happen in New York. The motorhome would break down. Hey, the motorhome just broke down. We're on a bridge. Cool. It's 3 a.m. here. I'm in San Diego. Figure it out, man.
It's funny when you get that call and it's like, there's nothing I can possibly do for you right now.
Yeah.
Why don't you call a tow truck? We'll pay for it at some point. Don't worry about that. But you're going to have to figure it out. And when business hours start, I can help you again. But there's nothing I can do right now. I want to help you, but I can't.
Yeah. I think more than anything, the biggest headaches were that type of stuff. If something would break down, I think at one point the trailer fell off the back of the motorhome. The bow of the boat went through the back of the motorhome. I remember that one.
Oh.
Wrapping up a demo at 8 p.m., knowing that you have a demo that starts at 10 a.m. the next day and you got to drive 600 miles through the night, that type of stuff. And you're just hauling butt. You're getting a call from the rep. Hey, where are you guys? You're late. And we're like, hey, we're trying to get there as soon as possible. Those types of things where I don't think a lot of the people actually knew how hard the job actually is. Because a lot from the outside, the people attending the events or whoever else just thinks, hey, you guys are just a rolling party. It must be a blast. But yeah, that tour was a good time. There was one incident on Lake Champlain where we actually had one of the kids fell and injured himself pretty badly, and me and another athlete, Greg Nekrasov, had to deal with that. That was a stressful day. But otherwise, all in all, it was a good time. Shoot, I think I've been to every single state in the United States other than the Dakotas. So not many people could say that.
I mean, it's the first position that you're put in where you're the boss and you're
Yep.
on the road with these dudes. And
Yep.
once you can make that work and once you figure out the first trip across America, 90 days of that, and you can do anything with the athletes as long as you have their respect.
For sure.
The trip across America, it's all about getting people on wakeboards. And right now we're at a time where like kids have so many choices, it's ridiculous, between Xbox, this, that, and a lot of them don't involve activities and sports like wakeboarding. I wonder if that has an impact on the wakeboard industry as a whole. Like, what is the state of the industry right now?
It declined a little bit there after the recession and that type of stuff, but it's growing again, which is good to see. The emergence of wake surfing has helped a lot of people get behind the boat again.
Yep.
Internationally, with all the cable parks, internationally, the sport's growing quite a bit. I mean, it's almost 50% of our business now is international.
That's all because of the cable parks that are popping up everywhere, and you don't need a boat to get on a wakeboard?
You don't need a boat, which obviously the boats these days are so expensive. In my opinion, they're killing the industry.
Yeah, you got to spend 70 grand on a boat.
70, that's an inexpensive one. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you got the 0.01 percenters that can afford the boats. Your everyday person isn't able to get out there and ride, unless you have a buddy who has a boat, which means then you got to live by a lake. And it's an expensive sport. It's a luxury sport, which with the cable parks, anybody can go do it. And luckily, there's a lot of cable parks popping up here in the U.S. now. I think there's 7 or 8 in Texas. There's 5 or 6 in Florida. There's 2 in California. There's 1 in New York. There's an event this weekend in South Carolina at a new one. There's a couple in the Chicago area. So with the emergence of these cable parks, it's helping grow the sport as well. And it's getting a whole new type of athlete or rider involved in the sport. They don't come from a water ski background or whatever. They might come from a skateboard or snowboard background. So it's cool to see you get a lot of different styles, I guess, of riding.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Daniel Grant last week, and I've been on a boat more times than he has. But that's what cable parks do, and it opens up the sport to the masses. All you have to do is know how to swim, have a couple $100 to buy a wakeboard, and your $10 for your wake park pass, and you're good to go, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, shoot, in Germany alone, I think there's over 90 cable parks. That's definitely helping the sport grow for sure.
And then as far as liquid force and wakeboarding, I mean, your owner, Tony Finn, I've heard he's a really unique dude. And don't get fired talking about him, but he's been doing this since 1980. I think he invented or marketed the snurfer on water, and it eventually became skiboarding, then wakeboarding. But I hear he's just so interesting and unique. So tell me what makes this guy so different.
Let's just say he has a personality. The guy's running at about 110% all the time. He is one of the most stoked individuals I think I've ever met.
Is it one of those stokes that almost gets annoying sometimes? Like, chill, dude.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Tony, if you hear this, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, like I said, he's running at full throttle all the time. It's great to see his enthusiasm, but yeah, sometimes you're like, hey man, just chill out, man, chill. But he's been a great person to work for. He is a smart businessman. Yeah, it's interesting to work with him sometimes. Most of the time, when he shows up to a certain place, you hear him before you see him. We'll put it that way.
Okay. We don't need to talk about your owner anymore because I think you've said enough. But you are the team manager, marketing manager at Liquid Force, and I've been a team manager, marketing manager as well. And I'd say a fifth of your job has to be team management. So you're really like the marketing guy who handles the team as well. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, correct.
I look at being team manager, it's an easy job if you're a people person that understands the past, present, and where the sport's going. If you answer your emails and you're fun to be around and you get shit done, you can be a team manager.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, it makes it a lot easier because you're already connected with the industry and you know all the people. So there's already going to be a respect level there. I always thought that the team manager that got involved in the photo shoots or put themselves in the shoots, those are the ones that you wanted to stay away from because if they got hurt, your day was over and the trip could be over. Have you ever had a situation like that, or do you stay away from all the organized team activities and kind of manage them?
No, no, no. I'm not in the chute. I'm usually either driving the chase boat, the boat that rides alongside that has the photographers in it, or directing, more telling the guys what to do, working with the photographers, what type of shots we need to get, kind of look and feel we're going for, and then herding the cats to make sure everybody's at a certain place on time and making sure we're getting everything done that needs to be accomplished type of thing. I'd say maybe in my early days, I'd want to get on a ride with the guys, but even then I didn't. And now, luckily, I enjoy the sport, but not nearly as much as I used to. And now if I go wakeboard, I can't walk for the following week. So I don't hardly ever ride anymore. So you don't have to worry about me. You don't have to worry about me riding at the photo shoots.
The biggest headache that you have being a team manager is the athletes. And when I say that, I don't mean it in a bad way, but contract season is never a fun time. You have to pick apart what a rider's been doing and how much they've been delivering. And in my personal experience, if I had an athlete do so many good things, there was never a time where I had a budget where I could really reward them for that. It was kind of like, all right, well, yeah, you did all that, but we still only have this, and This is what you're going to get. How is that in your world? I mean, is there room to negotiate, or when you have a contract, it's like, here's the number, man, and this is what you've got?
I mean, very rarely this day and age is there room to negotiate. And this isn't just in wakeboarding. I mean, this is across all of action sports, because I know, team managers and marketing directors at a bunch of other brands outside of wakeboarding. But, budgets, very rarely are you getting a budget that is increased each year. If anything, it's staying flat or it's decreasing now because, you got to make the bottom line. And the athlete budget is one of the biggest spends for these companies. So, there's not a whole lot of negotiating. And it does get tough. This person might be, hey, I just had a great year. I won 8 out of the 10 events I was in. I got this much coverage. I had this many followers, yada, yada, yada. And, I'm like, well, hey, sorry, here's what I have to offer. And I don't want to sound like an asshole when I say this, but sometimes it's like, look, this is what I have to offer. And if you can find a better offer from another brand, by all means, go for it. But I highly doubt you're going to. Type of thing. So there is still some negotiation here and there, but those days are long gone.
And where is the salary level of a pro? I mean, in the height of its popularity to now, is there a big difference in what the top level guys are making?
I would say the top 1 to 3 on our team compared to the top 1 to 3 10 years ago. The guys now are actually they're probably making a little bit more now, not a lot more. And that's just the top guys. It's the middle of the road to the kid just breaking into the sport who it's like, oh my gosh, this kid is ripping right now. We need to get him on our team. But we can't pay him very much because we're still paying these top guys a lot. So the entry level to get into the sport is pretty low still. And that's when the negotiation gets tough because you can't lose your top guys, but you also don't want to lose the kid that might be the top guy 5 years down the road type of thing. And another thing, there's some guys out there that are really good at wakeboarding, but they might not have the personality or the professionalism off the water, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I look for the most well-rounded person, just a good person off the water who can, you can put on the road with our reps and you can send them to an event and you don't have to worry about them.
I think we've established just being respected and good communication with the team is the most important part of being a team manager, and creating the vibe where your athletes want to feel like they'll run through a wall for the brand because they love you. I think that's your role, is you are the brand to them. And if they think you're awesome, they think the brand's awesome. But if they don't, then they're going to be frustrated with the brand.
Yeah.
You have all that. People love to be around you. And from what I've heard, you're an awesome team manager.
Hey, thanks, man.
Hey, you're welcome. I've heard there's Grace Face as well. And I don't know what Grace Face is, but you do.
Oh, boy. Grace Face is just when I used to get photos published back in the day, I always had the most odd looking face ever. Mouth wide open, looking like I was straining my hardest to land this trick, which when I'm out there riding, I never knew I was doing this.
Right.
But then I see the photos and I'm just like, oh my gosh. That became the grace face.
I thought the grace face was how you looked when you were angry, but I guess...
That as well. Yeah. There's grace face, there's angry Aaron, a few different things. Because there'd be times when I have a short temper here and there.
You snap a little bit when shit goes wrong and it all builds up?
I snap a little bit here and there. But sometimes you have to. That's sometimes how you get respect.
Is it the kind of snapping where the athlete, 2 days later, laughs at you and remember when you went crazy 2 days ago?
Yeah, and usually you hug it out afterwards and you apologize, but it kind of gets the point across at the same time. But yes, I do have the tendency to release a little bit of anger here and there, maybe when I shouldn't.
As you get older, it's got to be harder to be a team manager because the kids aren't getting older with you. I mean, you keep young people on the team. And do you find it harder to connect with the athletes?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, to be honest, yeah, I find it harder to connect with them. And with the age difference, I don't know how to say this. I get sick of dealing with them. I don't want to deal with an 18-year-old person anymore. I've done it. I'm over it.
Well, it sounds like you're going to get some help because I guess maybe a dude that bumped you out of your role as a team rider, a longtime Liquid Force pro, Sean Watson, is moving in-house to become your assistant, which no team manager gets an assistant, but you're a marketing manager.
Yeah.
But you're getting an assistant.
I am. Yeah, this just came up within about the last week or two. Sean's been riding for Liquid Force for 20 years. He's been an incredible ambassador to the brand. Probably one of the most well-respected riders in the industry, knows everybody within the industry. So we've been trying to think of a way to transition Sean because his riding career is coming to an end, but we don't want to just leave him out on the streets. So we've been trying to think of a way to transition him into a different role. And with more responsibilities for me in the office popping up all the time, and more stuff I want to be doing with the creative team and web design, just the daily marketing tasks, I don't have time to deal with the team stuff. So we just talked with Sean about kind of being assistant team manager, hopefully leading into team manager here maybe by the end of the year. But yeah, I'm stoked to have him part of our marketing team and being able to work with our team riders, because like I said, I know they all respect him. I think it'll be a good transition. And he's, kind of the boots on the ground type of guy. He's still going to be living in Orlando. He's going to be at the events. He's going to have time to go to the events and kind of see some of the up and coming kids that I might not know of. And now he can start dealing with the contracts and all that bullshit.
Nice. Well, it'll be a graduation of sorts for you.
Yeah.
Now you're going for your doctorate at Liquid Force University.
Exactly. Yep.
One thing in your team manager career, you were in the unique position of running the wakeboard programs for 3 different brands, Monster, Spy, and Liquid Force. So yes, that brings up a lot of questions. How much are you working with Spy and Monster? I mean, how much time in your week is spent to their brands?
It was kind of nice because I was able to piggyback kind of all 3 brands. So I put on an event series at Monster Energy that was the Monster Energy Triple Crown, and it was a wake park series for a few years. And when I did that, I had Liquid Force as the board sponsor, Spy was the eyewear sponsor. So I'd be at these events, and I could kind of run all 3 brands at the same time. When we do events at Liquid Force, Monster Energy was the drink sponsor, Spy was the eyewear sponsor. So I would kind of bring all 3 jobs almost into one, sort of say.
Yep.
There would be some interesting or challenging times when I'd be running, say, an ad of Parks Bonifay or Danny Harf. Parks Bonifay is a better one. I'd run a Spy ad of Parks, and he's riding for Ronix, who's our biggest competing brand at Liquid Force, and he's riding for Red Bull, who's our biggest competing brand at Monster Energy. But here I am running an ad for him at Spy. So it's like there'd be certain times where I just have to wear the hat of that one brand at times. And the other companies I work with understood that because I was able to do so much for the 3 brands together. So there would be some challenging times like that, but it all worked out in the end. And being with Monster Energy essentially since day one, actually when it was still Hansen's Energy, and then Monster came about, working with them at the very beginning, I got to know a lot of people outside of the wakeboard industry, just bring other influences into the wakeboarding industry from being with a Monster or like a Spy, whether I'm seeing what's going on in the moto world, the snow world, even the music world at times, and kind of be able to bring that into the wakeboard world. So it all worked out really well. It's a bummer that both those brands got out of the wakeboarding industry because at the time, Spy was the number one eyewear in wake. Monster Energy was by far the biggest drink in wake. I mean, I think back when Transworld Business and Wakeboarding Magazine used to do the logo wars or whatever, I think at one point there was a month or a few months in a row where I think Monster was number one, Liquid Force was number two, and Spy was number three.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of gave myself a pat on the back then.
And giving yourself a pat on the back there, but then when you see both those brands drop wake, do you look at that as a personal failure?
No, I don't look at it as a personal failure. I look at it as Spy was going through some challenges with budgets. Spy has always kind of been a brand that's kind of been on a roller coaster. It's doing really well, then it goes flat or it declines and does well. Spy's been an interesting company. So at the time, they were just making cuts left and right. The problem with those brands as well is they don't know what their ROI is with wakeboarding, I feel like, because they don't sell to a pro shop, sort of say, in wakeboarding. But when you go to inland America, wakeboarders go to Zoomies. And same with the energy drink. It was just hard for them to justify their spend, even though their overall wakeboard spend was about 1/20th of what they're spending on any other sport at the time.
Yeah, but I would think the ancillary coverage that comes out of wakeboarding is minute compared to everything else, because really, you've got your couple wakeboard hubs that are going to put out coverage, but you're not going to see a ton of TV commercials with like a wakeboarder on. Wakeboard athletes aren't getting the coverage that maybe ski, snowboard, and some of the other sports get.
Yeah, I mean, with the X Games and that type of stuff, for sure. This is a struggle I've always had working with these brands. Because, again, when you leave the coast and you go to Middle America or even Europe, for instance, there's more people that know who, say, the Bonifay brothers are than they know who, I'm trying to think of a surfer now. I mean, they know who Kelly Slater is or whatever, but otherwise they see the surfing lifestyle. Oh, that's rad. But they don't know much about it.
I would say when the Bonifay brothers came up, I mean, this is from me, and I definitely have a good awareness of all the action sports, but I would say from the 2000 to maybe 2006, it was more in my face than it is today. I knew the Bonifay brothers back then, and I wasn't actively seeking wakeboarding content, but today I guess I'm not getting as much of it as I used to for some reason.
Yeah, and you're correct there. And again, I don't know if that's because I keep kind of going back to X Games, because at the time wakeboarding was in the X Games. Those guys were there. We had the gravity games back then. Yeah, I mean, wakeboarding, like you said, it's just not on TV nearly as much as these other sports. Now with a lot of these other sports now becoming an Olympic sport, that's obviously helping out a lot.
Do you ever want to see wakeboarding as an Olympic sport? I would think as a manufacturer, yes, because it drives sales, but it's got to be the worst thing you could possibly think of from the perspective of a guy who doesn't like contests.
It's funny because there's part of me, just like you said, yes and no. I mean, yes, for sure, because I think it'll help the sport grow. I don't think it should be pulled behind the boat. If it does become an Olympic sport, it should be on a cable, just because it'll bring it to much broader internationally.
Yep.
But I mean, sure, I'd love to see it as an Olympic sport. Does it fit as an Olympic sport? Personally, I don't think so. But I also don't really think skateboarding does. I don't know if surfing does. But I also, at the very beginning, I didn't think snowboarding would. And now I think it's the most popular sport in the Olympics. And it's kind of the only thing I want to watch. So
the Olympics are changing. And if they make more of a change towards the X Games, it's not a bad thing for their numbers, ratings, revenue, and everything else.
And it's not a bad thing for you and I either. So, I mean, the more that changes to, more action sports based, I think the better. So Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I would like to see wakeboarding in the Olympics. I would like to make sure it's done correctly and scored and judged correctly and that type of stuff. So,
Well, that shit won't happen. I don't think you can have both.
I know. I agree.
I mean, you can after about 10 years of it, but
Yeah.
at first, I don't think that happens. It'll probably be like a water ski board that can control your event. And
Yep.
you'd have to go through water skiing judges who've never wakeboarded before. And you'd
The
be like,
IW
how the hell did this happen?
Yep, the IWWF, which I think is run by the IOC or whatever. So,
Oh, it is like that? I wasn't making that up?
yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm now going to go for a couple general questions that I just want to know about team management, and then we're going to get into inappropriate questions with Don. First, have you ever had an athlete on your program that you didn't like, or you put on the team and then realized you didn't like them after the fact?
Yes. Or I became team manager and there was an athlete already on the team. And I was like, I don't care how good this guy is. He doesn't fit.
And did you make that happen? Did you get rid of that person?
Yep. There's been a couple of those people that have kind of been there. And then again, like I said, I don't really care how good they are. They just didn't fit with the Liquid Force vibe. And
Are these people you still don't like today?
no, one of them actually is great. He does awesome for our sport. I appreciate everything he does. The other I've completely lost contact with. He's not even involved in the sport anymore. And there's been a few others along the way, but some people just want more or think they deserve more. So it becomes a mutual thing. It's not like, hey, beat it. It's a mutual departure.
One thing you have to deal with is breakups, and breaking up with athletes is hard to do. And I'm going to guess by the way that you run your program, these athletes are more than just athletes to you because there's a friendship level with them. And it sucks when you have to break up with them. It seems like Liquid Force's program is, hey, we're going to bring the athletes in-house to work with us when their careers are done. But you can't do this with everybody. So who's been the hardest athlete that you've had to break up with?
There's been a few along the way. Ben Greenwood was tough just because, I mean, he was still a talented rider. But again, you got to make room for the up-and-coming kids. Greg Nekrasen was a really tough one. I mean, Greg was somebody I looked up to when I was riding. He was probably my very first really tough person that I had to let go, and I didn't do it properly.
Was he angry at you?
Very angry. He was just angry with the whole brand for a while. We've since made up, and we're great friends still. But yeah, I'd say Greg is actually probably the toughest person. There's been a few others. Melissa Marquardt just this past year, who I've known since she was 13. She's like a little sister to me. You know, she rode for us for 20 years and she wasn't riding nearly as much, and she just didn't get that her career was coming to an end. So that was another tough one.
And what does she do now? The in-house decision is made. You're breaking up with the athlete, and then you've got a relationship with this athlete as well. It might be a little bit strained right after they get cut from the brand. But do you know what she's up to now? Is she still in wakeboarding, or is she going to have to find a path outside of it?
I think she's looking for a path outside of it. She lives in Oceanside. I know she's still active and she's surfing all the time. She's actually driving the drink cart at a really nice golf course out in Oceanside, and she got me a great discount on my tee time a couple of weeks ago, so that's a perk. And then I think she just got her real estate license, so I think she's trying to do the real estate thing as well.
Well, that's a hot thing to do right now.
Yep. So, again, I wish her the best. But no, she's riding. I don't think she hardly ever straps on a wakeboard anymore.
You can only live so long off of a name. You can live off a name for a little while, but not too long. Do you make more than the athletes?
Not all of them.
Okay. And then does work ever end for you?
You know, it really doesn't. Luckily, I'm able to put my phone on silent at night, but there'll be mornings when I wake up at 6 a.m. and I have 10 unread text messages from Australia or Thailand, and, you know, the weekends. No, it really, I purposely make it end for my own sanity, but no, it could easily be a 24-hour job.
But it's a 24-hour dream job, and at 44, it might not seem like a dream anymore. It might just seem like a job, but it is a dream job.
Hey, I'm 42, man.
Well, whatever. 42, 44, it doesn't matter. So now we're going to go into inappropriate questions with Don Wallace. I'm going to play you question number 1, but there's a little intro leading up. We're here to talk about Aaron Grace, a coworker of yours, one of your best friends. He's a former pro at Liquid Force, and now he's a desk jockey with you. And do you have your first inappropriate question ready for Aaron Grace?
I do. And, let me preface this by saying we've been great friends for almost 20 years, so I have a lot of great stories, but I feel like I should keep it super professional. I'm going to only ask work-related questions, so here we go. Yeah, my first question is, how have you managed to keep team riders from quitting after hooking up with their girlfriends? And how do you manage to still be great friends with these team riders years later?
That is amazing. Who hooks up with a team rider's girlfriend? Were they on the trip with the girlfriend and it all happened?
No, it didn't quite happen like that. It's a little more, it's a little more behind the scenes than that, but
that's even worse.
It's a great story. Yeah, exactly. But the crazy thing is he and this team rider are like amazing friends these days. So I'm amazed that it worked out. And not that I would ever try to pull anything like that, but I'm just interested to see how it worked for him.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. There is an unwritten rule. I think it's called the Code of Guy. I'm sure girls have a code as well. That's one thing you don't do. You don't do it to friends, but I guess to people who you employ, maybe you do it to.
I don't know. Somehow it worked out for Aaron.
So that's question number one. It sounds like you hooked up with the team rider's girlfriend. First, who's the team rider?
Oh my gosh. Do we really got to go through this again?
Yeah, we do.
Jesus Christ.
Do you not say bad words? You said, instead of ass before, you said but, and then you just said criminy.
No, I do like to curse. I'm taken off guard by this question. Yeah. The team rider is now going to be the assistant team manager. So we'll leave it at that. So yes, we remain good friends. How we remain good friends, there was a time maybe when he lost all respect for me, which I don't blame him at all. But over time, there were some long conversations. I apologized. Yeah, it wasn't one of the brighter moments in my life.
And where is this girl today? Do either of you still have contact with her?
Yes, I do have contact with her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you married? I don't even know.
No, we're not married. She actually lives here in Encinitas now, and we stay in contact, and we've become friends, and yeah.
When you say you stay in contact and you become friends, is it more like the late night friendship?
No, it actually isn't the late night friendship.
Damn it. All right, fine. Okay.
Maybe I'm working on that. No, who knows?
All right, well, if she hears this, maybe he's working on it, maybe he's not. Maybe you should give him a call at 11 and see what happens. Next question.
Oh my gosh.
So question number 2 is, what is your favorite thing about dealing with wake parents and or agents? Because I know how much you love them.
Yeah, and I could think it's a different thing with an agent because they're wanting money and wanting different things for the athlete. But a parent is much worse. They feel like they can totally be involved in a place where their child should really be involved. Speaking of that, I interviewed Daniel Grant last week, and Daniel doesn't even know how much money he makes because his parents are so involved. So I'm sure he has to work with Daniel's father a lot, and it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about parents.
Yeah, and I think Daniel's dad is actually one of the great ones to work with, but yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what Aaron says about it in general.
So how do you deal with the soccer moms?
How do I deal with the soccer moms, the helicopter parent, or the agent? Yeah, like Don said, it's one of my least favorite things to do, which I totally get it. I'm not a parent, but I understand, they're wanting the best for their kid. The agents want the best for their client. But again, they don't get it sometimes. They think that we have so much money to give. We have unlimited budget. We have an unlimited amount of product. My kid's the best. Here's his trick list that he can do. I don't give a shit about that stuff. I really don't. And I think my favorite thing while dealing with a parent or an agent is being able to tell them to, in a non-polite way, to fuck off. And you know what? Your kid is still going to ride for us. I promise you he's going to have a bright future. And you just got to believe me on that. And 99.9% of the time, I'm correct. So it's fun to go back to them and be like, hey, I told you so.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely the soccer mom, helicopter parent, agents. I think that's probably the worst thing that any team manager has to deal with. And it's not fun because you're dealing with somebody who really, really cares and is passionate about this athlete. So it gets tough at times, and you know, you got to be careful.
Especially the parent, you can say the wrong thing and hurt some feelings, and that will never go away.
Exactly. Yep. But like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, I'm sure you got better at dropping people after your first one, just like you get better with dealing with parents.
Yep.
And your final question for one of your best friends. I hope you make him very uncomfortable with this question, but what do you have for Aaron?
Yeah, I think I might have saved, even though the first one was pretty good, I might have saved the best one for last.
Nice.
So it's kind of a long question, but I think Aaron should fill us in on what happened during his trip to Prague years ago when he was still a team rider for us. I don't think I ever heard the full story, so I'm anxious to hear, but something about getting called up on stage for the show at a strip club in Prague. All I know is it must have been a really good time because I remember it ending with him ripping his shirt off in front of our office when he got home, and he was having a conversation with his then girlfriend about it.
So there we go. You were in a strip club in Prague and got pulled up on stage. Why did they pull you up on stage? Was it your birthday, or did they just say, we want that guy?
No, she just said, I want that guy. So to kind of preface the situation or the story, myself and a couple of other people, writers and photographer, were in Prague for back at the time they did the Mystic Cup, which was a skateboard event that Quicksilver put on, and our distributor was the Quicksilver distributor. So after the event, we get in a cab. Cabbie, you know, hey, we want to go to strip club. Cabbie pretends not to understand us. Next thing you know, he drops us off right in the spot we asked. He knew exactly what we were saying. We walk down these steps and kind of to the seedy little building, and we walk in, and there's a live sex show going on stage.
Was there a monkey involved?
There was no monkey, but let's just say I was kind of young and still pretty green at the time to this type of stuff. So whatever, we take a seat in the front row. That show ends, and it was kind of bench seating, sort of. It wasn't, you know, like tables and chairs, you know, like at your kind of normal strip club. Not that I know. The next entertainer comes out, and she walks around to every person in the front row and grabs her face, rubs it into her chest. And she does this to about 20 or 30 guys, but she skips me for some reason. So she gets back up on stage, starts, you know, dancing around, whatever. The whole time she's staring at me. She walks up to me, grabs me by the collar of my shirt, pulls me up on stage with her.
Huh.
I'm looking at my buddies sitting in the front row. My eyes are wide open, and they're just laughing their asses off at me. This is right after a live sex show is going on. So I'm like, holy shit, what's going on here? So anyways, I get pulled up there. She unbuttons my shirt. I have my shirt off. She throws me on my back onto the stage. Next thing you know, I have a cigarette in my mouth. I'm lighting it off of something that she has stuck in a certain place. You know, she's doing all sorts of interesting things to me. I get something else put in my mouth, which then something ends up on that's in my mouth. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm going to die.
Yeah.
She unzips my pants, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm scared shitless. Next thing I know, she reaches behind something and grabs a cup of ice, pours it down my pants, tells me to go sit down. That was the end of the show. So nothing that bad happened, really.
At that point, you had just seen a live sex show. You're on stage on your back with a stripper on top of you. What happens if her next move is to pull down your pants and to reenact the show that you just saw? What do you do? Because that's a weird position to be in.
You know what? The question has crossed my mind a few times, and I probably would have done anything I could to get off that stage because I could not be involved in that. I'll tell you that much right now. There's no way in hell I'm not that guy at all. I'm not even a strip club guy.
I'm not either, but I'm just thinking in that situation, it's a weird situation you're in. I'm sure you've had a few drinks. I'm sure you're on your back with a girl on top of you who's probably attractive. And it's just, you have to make that decision. Like, if she's starting to do something, you have to stand up, pull your pants, and be like, I'm out of here.
Yes, I would have done that. I'm sure everybody would have booed me because at the time everybody was cheering and, yeah, whatever. Cheering and laughing at the same time because they could tell how paranoid I was. But yeah, I think I would have done everything in my power to pull my pants up and get as far away from that club as possible.
All right. Well, that sounds like an amazing night and a great interview all around, man. I mean, your story's pretty cool. You went from a kid from Idaho who got the job he wanted as a janitor and was able to parlay that into being a professional athlete. And then you moved in-house and you're set to be in the wakeboard industry for as long as you want to be. And that's a cool seat to be sitting in. So I thank you for your time, man.
Hey, thank you very much.
So that was time with Aaron Grace, and I love how he has no filter in this interview. You can tell Aaron hasn't had any media training, and that makes for a great podcast. Kids out there, follow your dreams like Aaron, and maybe you can be the next janitor that makes it. Next week, I have a legend in the mountain bike world on the podcast. This guy is looked at as one of the guys who'd made biking cool again. I'm talking about Derek Westerlund of Freeride Entertainment, and man, this dude has such a great personality and an amazing story, and it's awesome we talk about it next week. Until then, please give me a 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen to me on. If you're on an iPhone, it takes a minute, and here's what you need to do. Go to podcasts on your iPhone or iTunes, search for the Powell Movement, scroll down to where you see the stars, hit 5 stars, and you're done. Thank you so much for doing it, and thanks for listening. My final thank you is for my sponsors who make this show happen. They are Evo, Rescue Water, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.